Hello, everybody. So let's talk some Palantir. So those of you who immediately noticed what you're staring at would be, by the way, absolutely correct. You are looking at a potentially a head and shoulders pattern. And if that is correct, then we are looking at some downside on the stock. Now, some people got really worried today. All the fear, uncertainty, and doubt is climbing out of the closet and starting to affect people. Today, as of the recording, as of the time of this recording, we are roughly around 8% downwards on the day. And justifiably so, people start to fear a little bit, and there's a lot of noise from the technical realm, which again we just justified about the stock falling back to $10. Yes, you heard me correct. By the way, looking back, if you watched my previous videos, you'll know I actually mentioned that the potential floor on Palantir currently in my humble technical analysis is about 11. So not that much far off of the current analysis that some people are bringing onto the table. And again, like I said, it's actually very justifiable and very correct to some extent, and I'll explain why I say to some extent of these people to assess that basically we're going back to maybe even $10, which is completely bonkers. That means we've done all of this essentially just to go back, and if you measure our initial beginning and where we got to, what we ended up with, we've done all this, we wasted all this time just to make this little gap potentially if we are talking about 10. More so, I'll say if we will be meeting 10, it will be very likely for the price action to close this gap or at least attempt and be magnetized because it's just naturally how the market behaves. If you're not certain about what I'm talking about this particular gap, this hole in the price action, okay? The market has a tendency to close these up, basically run through with full price action, just like you see right here without having any holes. So it'll be very likely, and that would mean the price action will drop back to 8, and I highly doubt that. Now, there are several variables that we can look and add into our analysis and understand why it is less likely. First of all, I want to take your attention a little bit here to the past, and this is something I've pre-prepared, but it's starting to look horrible to my eye right now, so let's redo it together. Very often in the market, people correctly recognize particular patterns like the head and shoulders or inverted head and shoulders, and this is just a part. Remember, this is like partially why I assess some of these people could be wrong. For example, right here we can correctly recognize an inverted head and shoulders, right here. But as you can see, the entire pattern was not completed. The pattern really much depends on the trend and the resistances and supports that we have at a particular time, and how this shape or the structure will work into the overall price action. Now, beyond this, very often, especially my students know that it is very important to always be aware of the big picture. Meaning, for example, here we had an inverted head and shoulders. We also had a head and shoulders right here inside, also various incompleted harmonic patterns, essentially, just like we have here. Now, you have to remember that these smaller movements fall into a bigger structure. Now, here we're going to start seeing something we've seen before. Hint, S&P 500 indices. Most of the various assets that most people are currently interested, but particularly right now we're talking about Palantir. Let's focus on Palantir. Follow the major indices, the overall market. Essentially, they're anchored to these far more powerful entities than their own selves. And in a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds rather, I'll show exactly the correlation and how visible it is. But as you can tell, very often in this process of the gradual whether trend up or trend down, we have these processes in between. Nothing is completely linear. So I want to take your attention, grab your attention, and for example, right here, okay, just what we saw earlier, and not a full pattern. Or similarly so, what we had right there. But notice how these two patterns fall into a bigger pattern, a shoulder right here, a very extended head, I know, but essentially you'll see in a second why it is a head and why am I so certain off of it. And some people again could argue that this would be the other shoulder. The second shoulder is not this. All of this essentially is the head. And if you can see, just like so, just like right here, here is our potential head and shoulders, the one that will bring us downwards. By the way, here on this chart, you can see that we have various supports and resistances that were established since, for example, that point in time. And it is very correct to assess of these people that we might break down to 10, because the 10 area, although does not appear on my chart here, is actually very strong support, and I agree with these people. But since then, we have established multiple supports and resistances that confirm that we potentially will be stopped along the way. And if the stock will be strong enough, the market, the particular interest in that particular asset will be strong enough, it will retain these supports. Now, where have we seen this pattern, and why we should rely on that extra information that I'm about to throw into the mix? That is the SPX. So very similarly so, just like on Palantir, you would be correct to assess if you would immediately recognize right here that, pardon me, okay, oh, right. This chart has more things on it. As you can tell, this was my original anticipation for the market. As you can tell, so far we've been the price action has been playing into my expectation very well. And behind it, in the actual candlesticks, you can recognize a very similar pattern that some of the people were mentioning. I was mentioning earlier that head and shoulders that potentially will bring us down. As you can tell, I do agree with these people to some extent, and I do think we'll have some form of a correction. And I said this before. And in fact, with these candlesticks, you can see that was very much my assessment that we will stay within this range, meaning we will test the 4,400. I do think, although the wedge here brings us to 4,440, I do think with slippage, just like right here, we might find ourselves testing the 4,400, a psychological number and a level that the market, I think, might test if this falls in line with my expectation. But if this does fall in line with my expectation, and as if we already know, those of you who watched my videos, that the entire pattern here is essentially, again, an inverted head and shoulders, right? And here internally, we're having a head and shoulders. Remember, the dominant shape, the dominant structure, okay, will be the bigger one that you see and recognize on the bigger time frame. That means this one, this inverted head and shoulders. And if this inverted head and shoulders is correct, it does not dismiss the potential of the market to correct so low that essentially Palantir will be dragged down with the rest of the market. But with current conditions, with the current momentum of the market, and as you can tell from my expectation right here from before, coincidentally, by the way, I was planning to turn on a completely different chart, but this played very well into what I wanted to show. And you can tell that this plays very well into my expectation, and essentially we will be retesting some of these levels again and again before we break through and continue the rally upwards. So I was actually, in fact, expecting and anticipating some of this behavior, and I do think we are now currently seeing the price action meet the resistance. Those of you who are in the Tom Nash community know that I've predicted this. Let's see, on the 26th, on the 5th month, so several months ago, this was my prediction in advance. As you can see, so far it plays out quite as expected. So what I'm not, first of all, this is not financial advice. I'm not telling anybody what to do. You guys are adults and you should make your own decisions. But consider the factors that I'm showing you right now. And very much like right here, the sentiment was very negative. Hence, we were dragged down lower with every movement. Although we had very decent corrections, we still continued and were essentially, the market was, the sentiment was so negative and everybody was so scared that naturally the market kept on being driven down even lower and further. In this instance, as we have improving conditions, although they're far from perfect still, and we still have probably more interest rate hikes coming from the Fed until the end of the year. Those of you who are the part of the community know exactly what I'm talking about. So essentially, guys, what I'm telling you here is don't completely get scared. Those of you who feel uncomfortable or or not confident about this situation right now, I do recommend to tighten up your stop losses and take profits if you feel like that would be the right thing for you to do. That's generally the advised thing to do. But I'm definitely telling you that, in my humble opinion, since we've established so many supports and resistances, as you can see on my chart, some of them have been established on our process downwards. We will probably retain these levels, and even though we probably will see some corrections, there is still some correction. We could very much easily see this 1354 level. As you can see, it is a level that was established quite a while ago, as I was mentioning. Let me just remove all that nonsense so you can see that a little bit clearer. As you see, the market respects this level and has done so a while back during the 2022 and during well, we can say somewhat peak of the pandemic. And since then, this level has not been tested, not even a single time. And we just now recently have started testing this level, and it would be very natural if we retest it multiple times before we continue upwards, as this very much falls in line with my assessment of the SPX. So with that in mind, guys, by the way, as you can see, that was some of the other predictions. So with that in mind, guys, I just want those of you who stayed this long and watched everything and the entire explanation, I want to thank you, first of all. Second of all, I would tremendously appreciate it if you all like and subscribe and do all that amazing stuff that YouTube wants and the algorithm needs to thrive. So please smash the like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that, do all that great stuff. I'll tremendously appreciate it. I'm currently growing my community and I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And yeah, follow me for more and such information in the future, guys. You have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye bye.